and make it into what it needs to be, then why would He harden somebody's heart? And it never was really explained to me as a child. I didn't pick up on any of this till later. But the fact, what does it really mean to harden Pharaoh's heart? Did God harden Pharaoh's heart? Yes. But it was in a certain way. See, the hardening is a figurative word. It can mean twisting as a rope. It means that God twisted the heart of Pharaoh. He was going to squeeze out what was in the heart to begin with. And if some preacher would have just told me that, I'd have understood it. But because it's not that hard to understand. God forced him to do the thing he really wanted to do. And all this is just something that came to me tonight because I have to take things and make them where I understand them or I don't get it. But here's a rag. Let's say this is your heart. All right? It's not even really dripping right now. But we know there's something in that rag. Well, I know there's something in the rag. You can't see it. But when you put pressure on that heart and twist it, it comes out of it. Now, I didn't put anything foreign inside that rag. It's what was put in. It's what was already in it before I got here. All right? It already had water in it. But the more you twist it, the more the truth comes out. Follow me? So, I've had my shower. I'm going to have to take a shower now. But, see if this mic works after you get it wet. But anyway, now if somebody had done that when I was a child, I'd have went, got it! Got it! So, hopefully some of y'all got it. It's what was already in there. He didn't take Pharaoh's heart and change it. He just put some pressure on it, squeezed it. That's what was already in there to begin with. He's a rascal. All right? He just squeezed it out of him. Pharaoh was just like the politicians of today. They won't say what they actually mean. They feel one way, but they speak another way. See, Pharaoh, he didn't want to let the children of Israel go, and yet he wanted to appear as a benevolent ruler. He wanted everyone to think that he was a generous man. But in this matter of Israel, he was very hard about it. He didn't want to let them go. And you know one of the reasons why? It's the same reason people don't get saved today. Many. Is because if he let them go, then he's accepting that there's a God other than him. The Egyptians looked to him as a god. He is one of the many gods of Egypt at that time. If he listens to this group of people, and his people, his Egyptians, are listening to what they're saying, and Moses or Aaron or whoever may be speaking says, their God said for you to let them go. If he lets them go, he's saying, okay, there's a God bigger than me. Uh-oh. Don't want to do that, do we? Now you understand the hardening of the heart? That's where his heart's at. It's rotten to the core. It's black. Black as soot. So, God's bringing Pharaoh into court, basically. He's saying, you're going to reveal the thing that's actually in your heart. You cannot say one thing and then do something else. See, God is going to force the king's hand in this particular matter. Look down at chapter 7, verse 4. But Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt and bring forth mine armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. So, he's, again, telling them, he's not going to listen to you. But this is a process, Moses, and you've got to go through the process. And the Egyptians, verse 5, shall know that I am the Lord, when I stretch forth mine hand upon Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. He's telling them again, trust me. You're going to know, Aaron's going to know, Pharaoh's going to know, all of Egypt's going to know, and my people are going to know I'm God. and they're not. That's what's going to happen here. In other words, Pharaoh is going to stand revealed for what he really is, and the Lord God of Israel will be revealed for who he is. The Egyptians are going to know, and the Israelites are going to have it confirmed, and then Moses and Aaron will be justified. All this negativism that's happening with the people, they're going to look to them and go, oh, they are justified now, because God was in charge the whole time. Look at verse 6. Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them, so did they. So they're obeying. And Moses was 80 years old. He's 80 years old. And Aaron is 83. He's 83. And when they spake unto Pharaoh, can you imagine that? I mean, I understand that 80 back then was not 80 today, but still, that's a while to be on earth before you do something like this. To stand before a king of a nation and say, let my people go. God's got a sense of humor. The Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron in verse 8, saying, when Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, show a miracle for you, then thou shalt say unto Aaron, take thy rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent, it said. Now Pharaoh's probably going to ask Moses and Aaron, where are your credentials at, guys? Show me, why should I even listen to you? You come before me, you made this excessive demand upon me. Now show me your authority. And Aaron's rod was to be the badge of authority here. Now, verse 10, Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh, and they did as the Lord had commanded. Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh, before his servants, and it became a serpent. Now, this is the situation here. And you can take this or leave it. It doesn't matter. It's either a serpent or a crocodile, either way. But if you look back the word serpent in this passage, there's not really much history concerning the snake in Egypt. I know a lot of movies and different things like that, and storylines have centered on snakes and things, but in the history of Egypt, that's not really a big issue there. The word here, looking back, is closer to crocodile. And during the days of Moses, there was a lot of these creatures living in the Nile River and the ponds throughout the land there. Very possible that this rod changed into some type of crocodile. At any rate, I wouldn't stand around and let it bite me, But as you look at the plagues of God here, you're dealing with a whole realm of zoology and stuff. It's the gods of Egypt were either animal or bird or insect. Paul wrote about it when he said, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. They changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and creeping things. And that was in Romans 1 and 22. And the Egyptians symbolized everything. Now, let me remind you, this is a nation of people that are not remotely close to this anymore. They're, like I said last week, they're Muslim. All their history is gone. God made a promise that this would happen, and it did. It's pretty much all that stuff's been wiped out. I mean, you obviously don't have pharaohs and stuff in Egypt anymore. But they symbolized everything. They took an abstract idea and they put it into a concrete form of an image. And they had these statues and stuff everywhere. They had deities which represented every phase and function of life. They didn't miss a thing. They changed monotheism into polytheism. And Sir Wallace Bridge put it this way. They believed in the existence of one great God, self-produced, self-existent, almighty, and eternal. But unfortunately, they felt that this being was too great and mighty to concern himself with the affairs of the destinies of human beings. In other words, they felt like this great big God started all this and then ran off. that this was beneath him, that he wouldn't hang around. Therefore, he permitted the management of this world to fall into the hands of hordes of little g gods, demons, good and bad spirits. That's what the Egyptians believed. Every type of animal, they worshipped it. You look back in history and you'll see all these different images and how that they worshipped. And each one stood for something. The sun, the moon, the stars, everything was another god. And they had their own astrology and stuff going on. It's the very thing that Paul found when he went to Athens. He found a monument to the unknown God, if you remember that. For as I passed by, beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship him, declare I unto you. And that was Acts 17:23. See, if a man worships all these different gods, then he cannot possibly know the living and true God. So the Lord God of Israel attacks the gods of Egypt to show who he really is. That makes sense. And he systematically picked them apart. I mean, he just annihilated them. The Hebrew word here, which was tannin, it was translated into serpent in the King James Version. And it's not translated serpent anywhere else in the Bible. Not that particular word. Matter of fact, in books of Isaiah and Ezekiel, it's translated as dragon. But the word is actually satanic in its meaning. It's probably why the translators used the word serpent. Serpent would make sense, the serpent in the garden, therefore the devil. Regardless of the reason, the fact remains that the Egyptians worshipped the crocodile. It occupied a large place in worship and religion of Egypt. Now this is the history part. I don't mean to bore anybody with it, but I just thought it was interesting because we find out what God does to this. Sabak was a deity of evil with a crocodile head. That was the shape of it, that crocodile's head. Now, Pepi, they've got some odd names for these things. The perpetual archenemy of all the solar gods, and this is what they believed appeared in the form of a crocodile. Now, the Egyptians engaged in this magical ritual, which was performed in the temple of Amun-Ra in the city of Thebes. Pepi lived in the nethermost part of the heaven and endeavored every day to prevent the rising of the sun god Ra. He stirred up lightning, thunder, tempest, storms, hurricanes, rain, tried to obscure the light of the sun by filling the sky with clouds, mist, fog, and blackness. The Egyptian ritual was an attempt to destroy Pepi. It was a prominent worship of Egypt, and the first thing against which God delivers a blow, Aaron's rods changed into the crocodile. Now look at in which a lot of those other things mentioned there, God uses. Darkness being one of them. But look at verse 11. It says, and Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers. Now the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. Now, I want to remind you, what God does, He does of His own accord. All right, He can do anything. He created man of the dust of the earth. He created life from nothing. There's a $50 word that goes with that, and I couldn't even begin to pronounce it. But it means to make life from nothing. The devil cannot do that, okay? But he can fool a lot of people, and he does have power. If these people of this age, back then, basically worshiping the devil is what they're doing, because they're worshiping they're calling them all deities and junk. Just keep that in mind when these magicians are doing what they're doing. The magicians of Egypt, they duplicated the miracle of Aaron's rod. All right, it says that they also did in like manner with their enchantments. So basically, they threw their rods down, they became serpents, or they became crocodiles, or whatever. Maybe it'd be better to say they imitated the miracle than performed it. However they did it, they made a pretty good show of it. Paul, however, has a word to say about it in 2 Timothy 3:8. He says, now as Janus and Jambres withstood Moses, So do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds reprobate concerning the faith. These magicians resisting the living and the true God. Because look at verse 12 through 13. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents, but Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. I love that part. And here it is. And he hardened Pharaoh's heart. He squeezed it. Alright? That he hearkened not unto them as the Lord had said. Just like God told him. Let's see here. I think we can do it in 4 minutes. It's interesting. The Egyptians worshipped this crocodile, and it's Aaron's rod that swallowed up their crocodiles. Now, that should have impressed Pharaoh, but it didn't. Because he's persistent in his ways. He still doesn't want to give up. Let's read on through here. The Lord said unto Moses in verse 14, Pharaoh's heart's hardened, he refuses to let the people go. Get thee unto Pharaoh in the morning. Lo, he goeth out into the water, and thou shalt stand by the river's brink against he cometh. And the rod which was turned to a serpent shalt thou take in thine hand. And thou shalt say unto him, The Lord God of the Hebrews hath sent me unto thee, saying, Let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto thou wouldest not hear. Thus saith the Lord, In this thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Behold, I will smite with the rod that is in my hand upon the waters which are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. And the fish that were in the river shall die, and the river shall stink. The Egyptians shall loathe to drink of the water of the river. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying unto Aaron, Take thy rod, stretch out thine hand upon the waters of Egypt, upon their streams, upon their rivers, upon their ponds, upon all the pools of water, that they may become blood, that they may be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. This is another blow at the worship in Egypt. See, the Nile River was sacred to them. They worshipped the river itself. It was they depicted the Nile as this deity, I guess you could call it. It was a fertility god named Happy, H-A-P-I. The little fat man is what it was. But anyway, there's a hymn that they sang in the temple of God, and I'm not going to bore you with that. But it talked about that little deity. See, the Nile River was the lifeblood of Egypt, but it had to be water to be their lifeblood, if you understand that. And they turned it to actual blood. And so now that it's actual blood, it becomes death to them. So what had been a blessing in Egypt is now a curse. And see, that's God's judgment. He's taking each and every one of these false gods and just crushing it. Because it doesn't matter what the magicians emulate or whatever. The fact of the matter is, God is God. And the magicians of Egypt did so with their enchantments. Pharaoh's heart, they appeared to turn water to blood. But the interesting thing is they can't turn it back. It says, Neither did he hearken unto them as the Lord had said. Pharaoh turned and went into his house, neither did he set his heart to his also. And all the Egyptians digged round about the river for water to drink, for they could not drink of the water of the river. And 7 days were fulfilled. After that the Lord had smitten the river. So this plague lasted. Can you imagine? Nothing but blood. Everywhere you have a source of water, even if you dig a hole and it fills up with water, it's blood. It's disgusting. For 7 days, a week. And Pharaoh was still not convinced that this was the hand of God, because his magicians were able to duplicate the plague. But this is the amazing thing. It was a manifestation of the power of Satan, of course, but they were powerless to change the blood back into pure water. So it's irrelevant if you can make water into blood. It's God if you can turn it back. See what I'm saying? So they still are fighting a losing battle there. You know, it doesn't matter, in which they will soon come across some that they cannot duplicate in any form or fashion. But it kind of gets them at the core of what they really are. All right, let's stand.